Take a moment and think about this question. Do you truly know what you know? Or do you just believe it to be true? In a world saturated with information, from social media headlines to news reports and even our own personal experiences, it's easy to feel confident in our beliefs. But what if that confidence is misplaced? What if the very foundations of our knowledge are built on shaky ground? Today, we're not just going to explore a philosophical concept. We're going on a journey into the heart of doubt. We're going to dissect a way of thinking that has challenged great minds for thousands of years and has the power to change how you see the world. We're talking about skepticism. This isn't about being a cynic or a perpetual naysayer. It's about a critical, powerful, and often liberating practice of questioning. From ancient Greece to the modern digital age, skepticism has been a vital force in the pursuit of truth. Join me as we dive into the origins of skepticism, explore its most famous arguments, and understand why, perhaps now more than ever, a dose of doubt is exactly what we need. Ready to question everything? Let's begin. To truly understand skepticism, we must journey back to ancient Greece. This is not some modern fad. It's a discipline with a lineage stretching back over 2 millennia. The term itself comes from the Greek word skepsis, meaning inquiry, investigation, or examination. From the very start, it wasn't about denying everything out of hand, but about the act of critical investigation. Our story begins with Pyrrho of Elis, a shadowy figure from the 4th century BCE. He is considered the father of Pyrrhonian skepticism. While he wrote nothing himself, his ideas were preserved by his student, Timon of Phlius. Pyrrho taught that we can never truly be sure about the nature of things. He believed that for every claim, a contradictory claim of equal strength could be made. This state of equipoise, or isostheneia, leads to a suspension of judgment, or epoche. The ultimate goal of this intellectual humility? Not just to be right, but to achieve a state of mental tranquility, or ataraxia, by freeing oneself from the anxiety of holding definitive beliefs. As the philosopher Michel de Montaigne would later express it in his essays, the greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself. For the Pyrrhonist, this self-possession came from releasing the rigid grip of certainty. While Pyrrhonism was the most radical form, another influential school of thought emerged from Plato's Academy. The Academic Skeptics, led by figures like Arcesilaus and Carneades, argued that knowledge was impossible, and that we should live by probabilities or plausibilities. Carneades famously argued against every philosophical dogmatist of his time, demonstrating that even a seemingly solid argument could be dismantled. His position was that while absolute certainty is unattainable, some propositions are more probable than others, and it is on these that we should base our actions. These ancient thinkers laid the groundwork for a tradition of questioning. They didn't just ask, "What do you know?" They asked, "How do you know?" This subtle shift is at the core of all skeptical thought. It's a focus on the method of knowing, not just the content of what is known. After centuries where dogmatic thinking dominated, ancient skepticism was rediscovered and sparked a revolution. The Renaissance and the scientific revolution were not just about new discoveries. They were fundamentally about a new way of thinking. And at the heart of this new way of thinking was doubt. The most famous figure to embody this new skepticism was the French philosopher René Descartes. He lived in an age of intellectual upheaval, where old certainties about the cosmos were being shattered by new discoveries. To find an unshakable foundation for knowledge, he decided to do something radical. He would doubt everything. In his seminal work Meditations on First Philosophy, he asks us to imagine a world where our senses deceive us, and even our most fundamental beliefs are wrong. He famously introduces the evil demon or malicious genie hypothesis, a powerful, deceptive being that could be tricking us into believing that what we perceive is real when it's not. This was not a cynical exercise. Descartes' skepticism was a methodical tool. He doubted everything that could possibly be doubted until he found a single, undeniable truth: his own existence as a thinking being. This is where he arrived at his famous conclusion: I think, therefore I am. So, cogito ergo sum. This was his Archimedean point, a single, certain point from which he could, theoretically, rebuild all knowledge. While Descartes eventually used this certainty to justify other beliefs, his method of radical doubt became the blueprint for modern philosophy. But Descartes wasn't the only one. The Scottish philosopher David Hume, an 18th century skeptic, took doubt even further. In his work An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, Hume questioned the very foundations of our knowledge, particularly our belief in causality. He argued that when we say A causes B, we are not observing some necessary connection between the two events. We are simply observing that event A has always been followed by event B in the past. Our belief in a causal link is not a logical necessity, but a psychological habit. As he wrote, reason is, and ought only to be, the slave of the passions. This profound insight shook the philosophical world and remains a central point of debate. Hume's skepticism forced philosophers to seriously reconsider the limits of human reason and the role of experience in forming our beliefs. These thinkers show us that skepticism is not a destructive force. It's a constructive one. By clearing away false certainties, it creates the space for a more rigorous and honest search for truth. So, what does this ancient philosophy have to do with us, here and now? In our hyper-connected world, skepticism is not just a philosophical exercise. It's a vital survival skill. We are constantly bombarded with claims and information, from miracle cures on social media to politically charged headlines designed to provoke an emotional response. This is where we must distinguish between healthy skepticism and destructive cynicism. A healthy skeptic is someone who questions claims, asks for evidence, considers the source, and is open to changing their mind when presented with new data. They understand the limits of their own knowledge and the potential for bias, both in themselves and in others. As the astronomer and science communicator Carl Sagan wrote in his book, The Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark, skepticism is a self-correcting process. He championed the scientific method as the ultimate tool of skepticism, a system designed to test hypotheses, seek out flaws, and arrive at the most probable conclusion, not the most comfortable one. On the other hand, a cynic is someone who dismisses all claims out of hand, often without inquiry. They assume malicious intent and are closed off to new information. This isn't about the pursuit of truth. It's about a fixed, negative worldview. The cynic says, "It's all a lie, so why bother?" The skeptic asks, "Is it true? And if so, how can we be sure?" Skepticism is the engine of science and critical thinking. It's what drives us to ask questions like, what is the evidence for this claim? Are there other possible explanations? Who stands to gain from me believing this? Is the source reliable and free from bias? By applying these questions to our daily lives, we become more discerning consumers of information and more thoughtful participants in the world. It's about building a solid, well-reasoned worldview instead of passively accepting one that is handed to us. Skepticism isn't just about how we engage with the outside world. It's a profound journey inward. It forces us to confront our own biases, our own deeply held beliefs, and the very stories we tell ourselves about who we are. This is perhaps the most challenging and most rewarding aspect of a skeptical mindset. The great French philosopher and essayist Michel de Montaigne, whom we mentioned briefly before, is the perfect example of this. Living in the turmoil of the 16th century France, Montaigne retreated to his tower to write his essays. There, he embarked on a project of radical self-inquiry, constantly questioning his own thoughts, assumptions, and experiences. His famous motto, "What do I know? So, que sais-je?" wasn't a cry of despair, but an invitation to honest self-examination. He understood that our own minds can be the greatest source of deception. We cling to beliefs because they are comfortable, because they validate our identity, or because they spare us the hard work of thinking critically. Montaigne's skepticism was a form of intellectual humility, a recognition that the ultimate quest for knowledge begins by admitting what we don't know about ourselves. This internal skepticism also makes us more empathetic. When we understand that our own certainty is often an illusion, we become less rigid and more open to the perspectives of others. Instead of automatically dismissing someone we disagree with, we can ask ourselves, on what basis do they hold this belief? What experiences have shaped their worldview? This doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but it allows us to engage in genuine dialogue rather than shouting matches. It moves us from a position of, I am right, you are wrong, to, let's explore this together. Skepticism, in this sense, is an antidote to arrogance. It's a humbling practice that teaches us to be vigilant not just against the lies of the world, but against the lies we tell ourselves. It is a path to intellectual freedom, an escape from the self-imposed prisons of unexamined beliefs. We have journeyed from the ancient Greek inquiries of Pyrrho to the radical self-doubt of Descartes, and from the empirical questioning of Hume to the scientific skepticism championed by Carl Sagan. We've seen that skepticism is not a rejection of knowledge, but a method for purifying it. It is not an end in itself, but a means to a more honest, more rigorous, and ultimately, more truthful understanding of the world and of ourselves. In a world filled with easy answers and echo chambers, the power of skepticism is more crucial than ever. It's the muscle we must exercise to resist manipulation, to sift through the noise, and to think for ourselves. It's the difference between blindly accepting what we're told and actively choosing what we believe based on evidence and reason. This is the liberation that doubt offers. It frees us from the anxiety of having to be absolutely right and opens us up to the endless possibilities of being more informed, more compassionate, and more intellectually honest. As the American philosopher and psychologist William James once wrote, "A great many people think they are thinking when they are merely rearranging their prejudices." Skepticism is the tool that helps us break free from that cycle. So, the next time you encounter a claim that seems too good to be true, or a belief you've held for a long time without question, I invite you to pause, to ask, to doubt, and to begin your own journey of inquiry. Because in the end, it's not the certainty you gain, but the questions you ask that will truly set you free.